Hello and welcome to today's Briefinar, where we promise to be bright, to be brief, and to be done in 19 minutes or less. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of how to fight sales turnover using your onboarding strategy. We're going to talk about how you can make sure you're putting your money, your time, your energy behind the right people, the people who are going to stick. We're going to talk about why it's important to get your existing employees, your existing team members in on the onboarding process early. And here's what's key, how to get them engaged. We're going to talk about using onboarding as an opportunity for culture building, and so much more. My name is Jeb Brooks. I'm the CEO of the Brooks Group, so I have the opportunity to guide and direct the organization from a strategic level.
And I'm Drea Douglas, Director of Talent Management Consulting. I lead a team of consultants that help organizations hire, develop, and retain top sales talent.
So, Drea, I know you have a poll question for our audience to get us kicked off, so what's that question?
Yeah, we wanted to ask you guys first. We're all here today for fundamentally the same reason. We value retention. Organizations value retention for different reasons. So we want to hear from you. What's the primary reason your organization values retention? So you've got a couple of possibilities there.
Are you all looking to reduce the costs of turnover, or perhaps look at succession planning? Maybe you're thinking about how to improve your company's energy or morale, maybe improving efficiency or something else. So we'll give you just a little bit of time to answer, and then we'll take a look at what brings you here.
Yeah, responses are rolling in. If you get a chance, go ahead and take a look at that. So the question again, what is the primary reason your company values retention?
Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see what those answers are. What brings people here? Okay, it looks like number one from the group is to improve efficiency. I hear you there. And number 2 is reduction of costs of turnover. Drea, what do you think?
I think that's a very interesting result. Actually, I would have guessed most people want to know or value retention to reduce the cost of turnover. It looks like it flipped towards improved efficiency. So I find that interesting personally.
Well, the good news is we are going to address all of these topics, but we'll certainly spend a little bit more time on how the onboarding process can help improve efficiency. And I think we're talking there about probably time to productivity, which really brings us to the point here. Before we jump in the topic, I think it's important to clarify the kinds of roles we're talking about here. We are thinking about roles like sales and customer service, inside sales, outside sales for that matter, administrative roles, not necessarily the folks who are working in the warehouse or roles like that. We're really talking about these kinds of positions where efficiency, I'd submit to you, really matters. In other words, the faster we can get somebody to productivity, the better off we are. So, Drea, I've got a question. As I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of the clients and organizations that we get to work with, who are probably represented in our audience, there are a couple of ways that onboarding isn't working. One is where there's no onboarding, and the other is where it's perhaps too much. Tell us how it plays out in your experience for those organizations where there's not enough or no onboarding.
Right. Well, and folks in our audience may have had this experience themselves throughout their career where, for example, you show up on the first day and you spend the whole day filling out paperwork, or, no one's there to greet you at the front door and walk you to your desk or give you a tour of the office. These are very simple, basic things right now. Believe me, we'll get to the meat soon. We have to cover these things at first. But for those who may not be thinking about these things, these are really important, and they have a huge impact in a person's impression of your organization. So another thing that happens oftentimes when there's no onboarding are that people are dropped into their work without being prepared. So, for example, you've got a sales rep who's starting, and the organization says, okay, we hired you. We hired you because of your vast experience. You've been doing it for a long time. Here's your list of leads. Now go.
Well, and the functional result of having no onboarding, or let's be practical here, very little, is turnover, right? If people aren't made to feel at some level welcome, and then beyond that empowered to do their work as quickly as they possibly can, turnover increases. which of course eats into that efficiency. So let's look at the other side of the coin, as it were. What happens when there is too much onboarding?
Right, and I think this is a concept that many people probably don't think about, but oftentimes when an organization does set their sights on onboarding, they can go a little overboard, if you will. So that looks like significant time spent in training, especially classroom setting, a person sitting in a chair, looking up at a screen, at slides that are very content heavy and expected to acquire a lot of information and really stuff that in there in a very short amount of time without really allowing the opportunity for them to really marinate on that or process that information, and or to apply it in ways that are small but significant.
Yeah, I think that's key, right? It's about the opportunity to process and then critically apply what's learned. So in other words, using that information. If we work with a number of organizations whose onboarding process can last many weeks, and certainly there's a lot of material to cover and important topics to touch on. But if new employees aren't given the chance to work with the material, to process it, we're just not being as effective as we could. So let's take a look at sort of what a sample agenda might look like.
Right.
What should we be covering?
So if you're going to build in time too, there's a place for that. But so when we're talking about setting your new hire up for success, here's one way you can do that. It's by building out an hour-by-hour agenda. This is a very basic or simple pared down version of what even at the Brooks Group that might look like. So day one, they know they've got a team huddle or team meeting. Then they've got their office tour. So basically this acts or serves to set the expectation for them so they have a full and productive first 2 days, not just where do I go, what do I do, who should I talk to, what are my resources?
Great. And there are a couple of key points here. Number one, and we're going to get into some aspects here. I see a question coming in right now, and the answer is, the question is it 2 days and you're done? No, not necessarily. It depends on your organization, is our answer. This is just a sample. And the most critical element on this agenda, by far, is something I don't want to gloss over, and that is the role of a mentor. The research clearly shows the more engaged a mentorship program you have is, the less the turnover you experience. And the reason for that is fairly straightforward. I think it's pretty obvious. If people have somebody who's not their manager, who's perhaps not even a direct peer, but somebody who's been in the organization for a period of time and can help them navigate the hallways to understand what appropriate, inappropriate looks like, where those questions can be answered in a safe environment, their time to productivity and their likelihood of sticking around is key. So you see on this sample agenda, we have a couple of opportunities for lunch and meetings with a mentor. I didn't want to move past that, but
right.
Let's dig in a little. Go ahead, Drea.
Just to be clear, we don't expect their day to end at 2:30. So I don't want anybody to think that that's the case. This is just a sample snapshot of what one of those might look like.
Good pickup. That'd be a good opportunity, though. A good couple of days.
You get to go home now.
You're done.
They'd be very happy, I'm sure.
All right. So, but you're really talking about starting the process well before that first day. You're looking at 2 weeks before the first day. Tell us a little bit about how that plays a role, if you would, Drea.
Right. So we encourage organizations to think about onboarding well ahead of time before the new hire gets there. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you announce the new hire to the team. So depending on the size of the organization, this could be your whole company. This could be just the team that they're directly working on, a department, what have you. The team members should know this person's name. It shouldn't be the first time they've heard their name when they first walk in the door. They should also know the role they're going to play. So what is this person's position and what's their purpose in the organization? What gap are they filling? How are they going to help us meet our goals? So the relevant parties that you might consider doing this for are their managers, obviously, and relevant managers that they would touch, and their peers, things like that.
Yeah, all of the folks who are playing a role, and there's a key element here too, and that's the idea of setting expectations with those existing employees about what role they're going to be playing with the onboarding process. For example, here at the Brooks Group, there's sort of a cross-departmental team that we put together that takes a new member of our organization out to lunch on that first day. So just setting that expectation, making sure that people are aware of that role. But let's talk about what happens a week before the first day, Drea.
All right, so now you're counting down, and this is a really good time to send out a package to your new hire and to reach out to them. You can have an executive reach out either 2 weeks or 1 week before to personally tell them how excited they are that they're joining the organization. So they get that personal touch from the top people in the organization that makes them feel welcome and like a valuable member of the team. And in the package that you might send them, you would want to include that agenda so they know what to expect and they can prepare, as well as any materials. So in that welcome package, you might consider answering questions like, what time should I arrive? Even at the Brooks Group, it's not necessarily obvious to somebody if they should, be super early. That might not be the best thing either. So we actually, I remember when I was hired, I was asked to arrive 15 minutes late, which I would never have expected because they had last-minute things they needed to put in place to make sure they were ready for me. Things like how should I dress? If it's a business formal environment, more casual, just to make sure that they know those things. Who will greet them and where should they park or enter the building? Basic stuff like that. It should also include any paperwork so that they can fill that out and have it ready to hand you, and they're not spending that first day on the job doing that stuff. And then, of course, the agenda should be a part of that as well. So you're setting the expectations for both the new hire and current employees regarding the onboarding process, and you're doing that, in the lead up to that new person starting.
Perfect. And, this time before the person starts is also a great opportunity for perhaps a key executive to reach out and touch base with a new hire and say, hey, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. That really goes a long way in terms of building that sense of camaraderie and that sense of community and continuing. Look, let me put it this way. Very often, a new hire who's joining your organization is as enthusiastic about working with you and for you during those first few moments before they join and right after they get there as they ever will be. They've been romanced through the interview process. They're excited about what's to come. And so to maintain that, look for opportunities, as I said, whether it's a key executive reaching out or the way this welcome sort of package is put together. Onboarding begins and reducing turnover begins well before that start day. But let's get to it, Drea. Tell us about these first 2 days.
Well, of course, now's the time where things are really easy. They execute that agenda. So they show up, they know exactly what's expected of them, they know where to go, who to talk to, who they can ask questions of. They've been assigned a mentor, and you can start executing that agenda.
And this is a great opportunity for us to highlight, an element that I think can certainly make a difference in the way you onboard your sales professionals. And that's to execute and to have in place a strong sales process. What we find is our clients who've implemented the Impact Selling System, which is a linked, sequential, customer-focused sales process, see onboarding that is faster, that is more efficient, that is easier to replicate, simply because the steps inside that sales process, what you expect your sales team to perform when they are working with your prospects and customers, is more easily repeatable. And so if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, certainly reach out and let us know. We've got a program coming up the 7th and 8th of December in Atlanta, and it certainly would make a difference as you're looking at onboarding new salespeople. But let's take a look here, Drea, at the importance of continuing this idea of onboarding.
Sure.
Teaching culture.
I think that's really associated with this first 2 days. When a person walks in your front door, they're going to start gathering information or taking notice of what your culture is. It's always there. It always exists. So you want to make sure that it is clearly defined. You don't want them to be vague about what the culture is. And one way you can do this is to recognize others inside the organization who model those behaviors. So, for example, here at the Brooks Group, we have 7 core values. They are very well defined. They're very tight and specific. And I believe, Jeb, you yourself worked very hard with the executive team to think about folks inside the organization who really exemplified those characteristics, who had done something recently to illustrate those things to everybody else, so that everybody knows and understands really what's to be expected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this idea of encouraging managers to deliver targeted coaching kind of speaks to this. And the best way to introduce that on the front end of a relationship with a new employee is through story. Mm-hmm. And to tell stories about what existing employees have done to live and breathe those core values. Mm-hmm. Here's what we mean. Look, people leave organizations, whether they voluntarily turn themselves over or they're asked to leave, because of a mismatch of company values, of core values. And the better job you can do in the onboarding process of introducing them to those core values, what I like to call the rules of engagement, mm-hmm. they're at a much higher likelihood of sticking around. Look, if you don't introduce those core values early and completely in that onboarding process, you're asking people to play a game without having told them the rules of it. Mm-hmm. And that's really not fair, and it holds you back. So as you said, tightly define those core values. It's not about just simply saying, we have a core value of integrity. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
It's about defining it with specific examples, with stories about what people have done, and weaving that throughout the onboarding process, spending as much time as it makes sense in your process to do that. So let me, Drea, pass it on to you.
Yeah, and there are some other things here that I found interesting that I've noticed other organizations do to help facilitate a culture of retention, really. And that is to conduct not only exit interviews, which a lot of organizations already do, but if you don't, an exit interview is a great idea. When people leave, asking them to take the time to sit with somebody and have an interview about their experience working at the organization and why they left is helpful information to have. But also stay interviews. So with those folks who've been with your organization for a couple of years and have assimilated well and fit well within your organization, have performed well, consider conducting stay interviews with them and asking them, so what are the deal breakers? What would be a deal breaker for you here at the organization? Or what do you love about working here? What keeps you here? To help you define more clearly what it is exactly that gets people to stay.
All right, so we are right up against the time here, and so I'm afraid that these questions that have come in, we will have to answer directly via email. There are a couple here, so if you've sent one in, we will get it out to you via email. But that said, we want to say thank you so very much for taking the time to spend a brief 19 minutes or less with you. It has been a pleasure having you today as our expert. Drea, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Jeb.
And thank you, of course, to our audience. We encourage all of you to stay in tune for our next briefinar. And between now and then, take a look at the Impact Selling Public Seminar scheduled for December 7th and 8th through there in Atlanta, Georgia. With that said, I'm Jeb Brooks, CEO of the Brooks Group.
And I'm Drea Douglas, Director of Talent Management Consulting.
Thank you for joining us.